Welcome to Lingua Latina, Chapter 8, Grammatica Latina. This chapter has a pretty extensive grammatica. It's mostly review. It's covering the pronouns, and so here we have different kinds of pronouns. We have qui or quis, which is an interrogative pronoun, qui, which is a relative pronoun, and is, which is a personal pronoun, and ille, which is demonstrative. It points things out. So this is who, question who, like the person who, is he, plus ea and id, she and it, and ille, illa, illud, that one. So let's get right into the translation, because I'm only going to scratch the surface here. So A, the masculine pronouns. Who is carrying the sack? The slave is carrying the sack. Which slave? The slave who is carrying the sack is Cyrus. He, or that slave, is carrying the sack. Julius calls his slave. Which slave? The slave whom Julius calls is Cyrus. Julius calls his, or that, slave. Julius is the master of the slave. Of which slave? Cyrus is the slave whose master is Julius. Julius is the master of him, or of that slave. Julius gives an apple to his slave. To which slave? The slave to whom Julius gives an apple is Cyrus. Julius gives an apple to him, or ili servo, to that slave. The sack is carried by the slave. By which slave? The slave by whom the sack is carried is Cyrus. The sack is carried by him, or by that slave. The slaves are carrying the sacks. Which slaves? The slaves who are carrying the sacks are Cyrus and Leander. They, or those slaves, are carrying the sacks. Julius calls his slaves. Which slaves? The slaves whom Julius calls are Cyrus and Leander. Julius calls them, or those slaves. Julius is the master of his slaves. Of which slaves? The slaves whose master is Julius are Cyrus and Leander. Julius is the master of them. Oh, sorry, dang it. Is the master of them, or of those slaves. Julius gives apples to the slaves. To which slaves? The slaves to whom Julius gives apples are Cyrus and Leander. Julius gives apples to them, or to those slaves. The sacks are carried by the slaves. By which slaves? The slaves by which the sacks are carried are Cyrus and Leander. The sacks are carried by them, or by those slaves. Okay, now the pattern follows for all of these sections. For the feminine, so the slave girl is gone. Which slave girl? The slave girl who is gone is Syrah. That slave girl is gone, or she, or that slave girl is gone. Okay, so I need to move ahead though to show you the way that Orberg organizes his declension chart for hic. Okay, here is hic, haec, hoc. Hic means this and that. I mean this. So this wall, this road, this word. Okay, not that. So one thing I want to point out is in grammar textbooks, typical American grammar textbooks like Wheelock or Cambridge Latin Course, they go in the order of nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and then ablative. And that's the way that when I do my grammar and do the chants separate from this course, we'll do them. So that's the way I'd like you to memorize them in here, is to insert the accusative here between the dative and ablative when you chant them. So you chant hic murus, huius muri, huic muro, and then the accusative, etc. Give those a try. I'll see you in the exercises.